Welcome to Holistic Human Performance Podcast. My name is Gena Bradshaw, where we talk all things holistic health, wellness, spirituality, fitness, meditation, energetics, and so much more to help you become the healthiest version of yourself. Let's dive in. This is not medical advice. This is simply to help you on your journey through health, fitness, and wellness. I hope this helps. You can complement this with anything that you are doing currently in your life. Enjoy. Have you ever felt absolutely hopeless when it comes to your health, body pain, chronic disease, mental and emotional distress, and your stress management? Yeah, I've been there too. And after years of my own health and healing journey, learning all of these different holistic healing modalities and tools, I've finally come to a point in life where I have absolutely never felt better. And I want to teach you those tools. And that's why I've created the Magnetic Mobility Meditation Program, designed specifically to tap into your body, listen to the inner wisdom it's trying to share with you, and really connect your mind, body, and soul so that you can be the healthiest, happiest version of yourself and be able to thrive in your life and truly learn about your own energy, what you need, what your non-negotiables are, as I combine this body-based practice to help you reclaim your health and thrive in your life. And did I mention that you get a 5-day free trial to the Holistic Human Performance Wellness Center, where you can access all these different programs, on-demand videos, meditations, breath work, movement, exercise, nutrition coaching, all to help you biohack your life, enhance your health and well-being, and to help you have these tools that you can put in your toolbox and you can utilize them whenever, wherever you need. Go get your 5-day free trial at www.holistichumanperformance.co/academy. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Holistic Human Performance Podcast. I'm your host, Gena Bradshaw, and today we have a very special guest. We have Greg the Hydrogen Man with us today. I am so intrigued on this topic. He deals with molecular hydrogen therapy specialist. That is what he does. He's a researcher and host of his YouTube channel, Uprising 144K Hydrogen Man. And, this is, especially as everyone, listeners, my story. I'm a 2-time cancer survivor. So I'm always trying to research and learn about new, or really just things that have been around that can improve my overall health and well-being. And so when I found out about Greg, I'm like, ooh, this is going to be a really great podcast interview. So I'm really excited to have him on and talk to us about hydrogen water. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be on here.
So why don't you, because you have a very interesting background with your own health. So why don't you tell us about that and how it kind of led you to learning about hydrogen water?
Yeah, so basically, I actually worked in the medical field for like 2 decades.
Okay.
And I learned a lot about what goes on behind the scenes by really obviously working in the field, and which is very disappointing. And actually, before I begin, I am going to say, I'm not going to give any medical advice today. I'm not making any
Yes.
medical claims. Everybody, please consult your physicians. But so the problem began to be once I got sick, I was like, oh no, I do not want to navigate, this world of medicine and doctors and, in my opinion, just so much nonsense in that
Yeah.
world. I'm not saying that there isn't good things, but it's a really tough world to navigate. And I had so many issues. I didn't just have one thing. I had so many of them. And that obviously, in a lot of it wasn't very straightforward. It wasn't just like, oh, you have high blood pressure. Okay, that's easy. Because to me, blood pressure, diabetes, cholesterol, like these things are easy, you know. to deal with is what I've ultimately discovered. Because what I ended up having to do was really create my own path. And I really, instead of looking, I know there's a lot of podcasts out there and I enjoy listening to them as many people do. But the thing that was really frustrating to me, now this was many years ago, because I've known
Mm,
about hydrogen for a very long time. And I've been doing my channel, I think almost a decade or something. And so, and everybody's kind of just finding out about it now, but it's for me, it's
yeah.
not really new. And so ultimately, what happened is I needed to find my own path. And when I would listen to different people's opinions or podcasts about health, it was frustrating because you listen to one podcast where somebody would say, you eat nothing but meat. And then somebody says, no, no, you should eat nothing but vegetables. And then somebody says, no, you should drink this water. And somebody else says, no, this water. And then you're like, oh my God, this is so overwhelming. What's the right answer? Because when you're dealing with a health problem, you don't have a lot of time to be
Yeah.
going on different paths for, years or even months sometimes. And
Right.
so what I decided to do on my own was I decided to just look at scientific data. And I look at everything. I look at scientific evidence, but I also weigh it out against, me doing some critical thinking. And I look at a little bit of everything to try to create my protocols. And I was trying so many things, not having a ton of success. Maybe I should tell people some of the things I had. It was a pretty long list.
Mm-hmm.
So I had autoimmune issues. My gut was an absolute mess. I had massive inflammation to the point where I literally couldn't walk oftentimes. So I was in just excruciating pain. And when I would get, for example, really heavy like painkillers, like a morphine or something really heavy duty, it didn't even make a dent. That's how much pain I was
Wow.
in. And so that was really debilitating. I had some tumors in my body, so that didn't help either. My liver and my kidneys were not really optimal, so they were not really at their best. On top, on top of it all, my heart, I had a heart condition too, which I wasn't even thinking about trying to fix. But my cardiologist, when he saw my heart issue, he just said, "Look, you'd be lucky to have 10 years. You're going to have to do something for your heart, probably open heart surgery." And so there was just all these different things. But the thing that for me was the biggest thing that got in the way was my pain. I literally couldn't pick up a remote control and change channels because my joints hurt that bad.
Whoa.
And so it was pretty nasty. I was really in a bad situation. And when you don't have your health, obviously, I quickly realized by going through this, when you don't have your health, when you can't walk, I mean, it's everything. You can't
Everything.
work, you can't go grocery shopping. I mean, you can't do anything. And so it absolutely ruined my life. Dare I say that? And I'm just, I don't. I'm probably going to be vulnerable on the podcast, so hopefully I don't cry because it was a very
Please be
difficult road.
vulnerable. It's okay.
Really.
Yes.
And so sometimes it's a little embarrassing, but all I can say is that it was a really difficult path.
Yeah.
And I started reading a lot of scientific literature and seeing what I could find. And that's when I stumbled upon hydrogen, just to answer your question.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I read the data, I actually thought it was too good to be true. It just seemed too good to be true. And at the same token, I'm like, where in the world do you get hydrogen? I can't go to the corner drugstore and get hydrogen. And what kind of hydrogen, right? Because there's
Right.
different types of hydrogen. So what are we talking here? And we're talking specifically molecular hydrogen. People get
Mm,
confused with things like something that people call Brown's gas. Some people call oxyhydrogen. Some people talk about deuterium. And that's not where the evidence is. This is why I go towards, evidence, scientific data, and actually molecular hydrogen, as you might already know, is actually something that is medically approved
mm.
already, though not in America. Most doctors don't even know about it. In Japan, it's medically approved and is already being
Oh,
used. And there's massive amounts of studies. That's the other thing. It's not like there's only 50 studies or 100. I mean, there's over 2,000 studies at this point. And this stuff's the real deal. And I've seen it work. And it's just been a long journey.
wow. Okay. So you stumble upon, learning about molecular hydrogen. And
Yeah.
then what was your next move? What did you do from there?
So I'm actually really skeptical. And the reason that I am is just because there's so much nonsense out there and so many shenanigans. And so I
Absolutely.
didn't I didn't want to waste my time and my money, which I had for years trying to figure things out and buying different things and trying different stuff out. So I actually read the evidence for almost 4 years. So for
Hmm.
almost 4 years, I didn't even try it. I read about it and I got really desperate because my health was just declining more and more, and it was just so bad. And when I became desperate, I thought, okay, I want to do this, but where in the world do I get hydrogen? I was still so confused about it. The evidence is really good,
Mm,
but where things get trickier is how to make it, how to consume it, how much of it am I supposed to consume? Like, what's a proper protocol? I mean, when you talk medicines, they'll say, oh, okay, you take this many milligrams every so many hours, but no, that information was extremely hard to find, especially back when I was doing this research. And so the next level began to be, okay, how am I going to get my hands on this hydrogen? And it became very apparent that I was going to have to learn how to make it. You weren't going to be able to just go buy it.
Yeah.
You had to learn how to make it. So that's where the next step took me. And that was even harder. Reading the scientific data was actually really hard. There's so
Yeah.
much of it and it's difficult, though I can simplify it now because I understand it. But learning how to make it became extremely difficult. I had to learn about the science of metals like metallurgy. I had to learn about the different ways that you can make hydrogen. I had to learn about membranes that I didn't even know anything about these type of things and what's in them. And so there were just so many components to learning how to make it. And I tried a lot of different equipment,
Mm.
trial and error, spending way too much money on different stuff. And that's when I quickly realized that the majority of the equipment or the things that are used or the methods that some people say are the best were really not very good.
Mm.
And even though I did them, I wouldn't get really much results. And when I started getting into how to make it, like really learning more about it, that's when I saw the big results. In fact, when I really figured it out, my heart condition literally went away. And that shocked me because
Whoa.
I was not expecting my heart condition to go away. I was being scheduled for open heart surgery. And when I went to my cardiologist, all of a sudden, and I had had this condition for decades, by the way, and all of a sudden it was gone. And the doctor couldn't believe it. And I couldn't believe it myself. And I thought, this is nuts. And is it really this hydrogen stuff that I've been doing? And of course, I had began to do it with more detail in mind as far as how to do it. Because there's products out there, like I guess I don't like to show brands because I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus, but like these little
Right.
bottles, for example, are really popular.
Right.
Um, in my opinion, these are just garbage. I mean, this would never fix my heart, in my opinion. I don't
Mm-hmm.
like a lot of things about them, like the metals that they use. This is from China.
Okay.
Uh, Most of them are.
Yeah.
Even products that claim that they're not, they buy the parts from China and put them together. I've learned so much about this field by the research.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of little gimmicks like this, even like hydrogen pills. They sell pills, if you can believe that. I'm not a fan of those either, just because of lab tests and I've seen what's in them. I can't even believe that
I
they're, well,
can only imagine what's in them.
yes. I mean, they taste like metal. The water turns gray like metal when you put them in. I mean, I even have a lab report or like video footage on one of my videos. So all my videos are free, by the way, for everybody out there. I don't charge for anything. I'm doing this because I really want people. I know what it's like to suffer,
Yeah.
from medical issues, and I just feel like if we can just help alleviate the world a little bit from some suffering, I just
I
think it's.
agree.
I just think people should know about this. And what's ironic is I have observed nature a lot to learn a
Mm.
lot of my techniques and methods also. So yes, I read the scientific stuff, but I also observe nature. And what's ironic is, have you ever heard of a place called Lourdes, France, or Lourdes, France, depending on
Yeah.
pronunciation?
Yeah.
So that water is considered like this holy water, and people,
Yep.
magically heal there. And they've literally tracked patients and proven that they really do heal. And nobody could understand what was so special about this water. And they sent scientists there to study it. And they're all like, it's just H2O. There's nothing magical. And it wasn't until the Japanese, they're so detail oriented, they discovered that that water has high levels of molecular hydrogen.
Wow.
So nature does this. That's the thing. Nature actually does this. And so it's just such a beautiful and incredible story. And I believe it's really, I mean, I thought it was going to take off a decade ago. And it's just recently that people are really starting to learn about it. So it is kind of exciting.
That is exciting. So okay, so let's break it down for the listeners too. So what is hydrogen water? Just so
All right.
just they have some details about it, and then from there we'll kind of go into it.
So I'm going to simplify what is hydrogen, first of
Yeah,
all,
what is hydrogen?
because molecular hydrogen is just a gas, just
Mm-hmm.
like oxygen. So
Mm-hmm.
oxygen is a gas. Molecular hydrogen is just a gas. That's all it is. Now, when you talk about hydrogen water, what you're basically doing is think of like soda pop or carbonated water. What you've done is you dissolve the gas into the water. So like in that case, it would be CO2, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like in carbonated water. So what I do, which is what nature does, is I dissolve molecular hydrogen gas into water. So I'm basically using water as a carrier for this gas. But another part of the technique, so there's two techniques. I've literally developed this protocol where you can also inhale the gas itself.
Oh, okay.
So both is ideal, not just one or the other. If you have to just choose one, I would choose the water before the gas.
Yeah.
But both is ideal. And luckily, the equipment that I found, I mean, really thank goodness for the company who built this device. The story is really phenomenal, the guy who did it. But he built the best device in the world. And when I found it, it makes both. It makes both the water and the gas. And so,
Amazing.
yeah, he was so far ahead of his time, and it became the number one machine in all of Japan, by the way, the device I use. And it's so affordable where before I mean, the amount of money would have cost to make medical hydrogen gas. I mean, gosh, you probably need $100,000 or more,
Yeah.
and it wouldn't have been accessible. So now it's very accessible. Thank God to this person. So I'm very grateful for
Yeah.
that company actually. But anyway, hopefully that answers your question about what is molecular
Yeah,
hydrogen too
yeah.
fast.
Okay, so now let's talk about protocol. So how would someone utilize this? Does it depend on, what they're dealing with? Is it, or does it vary depending on, the person? So how does that work?
It definitely varies on the person, but the first thing I'll say is that to me, molecular hydrogen is kind of like saying, well, vitamin D, is vitamin D good for some people? It's like, no, it's good for everybody.
Okay. Yeah.
Same thing as water. What kind of people need water? What's a good protocol for water? It's like, look, everybody needs water. Everybody should be hydrated. In my opinion, everybody should have the cleanest water. We can always talk about that later if you want, because I do have lab reports, and
Oh yeah.
not all not all water filters are created equal, by the way. So
Let's
that's
talk
another
about it after.
important conversation. But basically, I think hydrogen is good for anybody. It's going to be good. The science on athletics is amazing.
Mm,
The science about medical issues, like my father was always a good example, and other people I've known who suffered from things like arthritis, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, diabetes, glaucoma, macular degeneration, heart conditions like mine, for example, that I had,
wow.
dementia, Alzheimer's, so many different issues. And like in my father's case, when he used the hydrogen, I mean, all those conditions went away, which was really remarkable because he was on a
Wow.
medication. It was amazing. And I was so happy because with his arthritis, he had to take a really nasty medicine that you really
Yeah.
can't take for that long because it'll destroy your liver. And I recently know somebody who actually died from liver failure from using that medicine. So
Oh.
I was concerned for my father, and he's also a wine connoisseur, so he really loves his wine. And you're not supposed to drink alcohol while on that medication,
Yeah.
even though he would break the rules. And I was like, that's dangerous. Don't be doing that.
Yeah.
And so getting him on the hydrogen and getting off these medications and the diabetes going away, the arthritis, and all these different things going away, it was just such a miracle. And it was so amazing to be able to see my father not having to rely on these pharmaceuticals. I'm not very fond of pharmaceuticals. They're needed sometimes, and I totally
Right.
get that. I'm not
Right.
speaking against them. It's just that I think we overuse them, like a lot of things. We just
A
overuse
hundred
it. Like,
percent.
I don't mind a little sugar sometimes. I prefer raw honey, but
Yeah.
we totally overdo it. It's like in everything these days when you look at labels, it's insane.
Yep.
And so, balance in all things. But yeah, hydrogen just really gives you, in my opinion, a very high quality of life and the types of things that it does. Like the other thing, my father had an eye condition, glaucoma, which at the time we weren't using hydrogen for him for the glaucoma. I
Okay.
was just thinking about his arthritis. That's all I was thinking about. There was research on it. He was taking bad medicine for it. I was concerned. The diabetes and the blood pressure, all those other things were not my biggest concern for him at that time. And what ended up happening miraculously is he has to get his eyes checked every year for his
Mm.
glaucoma. And he's been going to the same doctor for over 3 decades. And all of a sudden he goes in one day and they're literally like, he's like, I tested negative. And the doctors could not believe it. They're like, wait a second, this is not possible. We've never seen this before. You've been coming here forever. We know you have glaucoma. So they brought him back 2 weeks later to check him again. Same result. They brought him back again. Same result. And they said, this is ridiculous. We know you have glaucoma. This is impossible, especially at his age. And so they ended up making an appointment with one of the number one specialists in the United States. It took like half a year or something to make this appointment, and they checked them out and they just couldn't believe it. They just couldn't believe the results. And that was just the beginning, because later on data did come out. In fact, it's becoming more
Mm.
popular even in Japan. So I was kind of ahead of the game with this. Even
Yeah.
Japan didn't know about the effects on glaucoma. And then I started getting testimonials from a lot of my viewers about macular degeneration. Now, macular degeneration is supposed to be incurable. All right.
Yeah.
And I'm not claiming any cures or anything. I'm just saying that it's supposed to be. And I started having people writing me saying that their macular degeneration was quote unquote going away. And then on top of it all, I get my eyes checked all the time, and I just recently had my eye doctor check my eyes, and he was making some remarks, and I was curious. I'm a curious guy. I'm like, what exactly, why are you saying this? What are you seeing in my eyes? And he said, look, based on where you're at in life, let's just say that your eyes look like way younger than they're supposed to. And by the way, molecular hydrogen appears to be anti-aging. Just to throw that out there.
Mm,
But I learned from the eye doctor that you can tell a lot by looking at somebody's eyes. Kind of like dental, like going to a dentist, they can tell
yep.
your age by looking at your teeth and your mouth. And looking at the eyes, basically just about everybody develops cataracts, as you're getting older. And I was very, very happy and thankful when he's like, "Man, your eyes look like that of a 20-year-old." And so that was I was very happy about that because I don't want to have eye issues.
Right.
I don't want to go blind. But anyway, probably went too far on that tangent, but just sharing some exciting information throughout the years.
What I want to know, and this is great, by the
Mhm.
way, because what's difficult is when you do go to a doctor and then you have something like this, right? And they just like, don't believe it, don't believe it, don't believe it.
Right.
And you're like, no, no, this is actually a real thing. So what are some of the like reactions to these doctors? Like what do they think? What do they say? Are they like open to it? I want to know.
Oh man, I got so many stories about doctors at this point. I remember one doctor was working with a patient with diabetes, and that person actually tried some of the products that we were talking about, like the pills and these cheap little products like this guy and stuff.
Mm,
And she wasn't really getting results, and she was going to give up on the hydrogen thing. This was years ago. I got a video on it. And she found me and she's like, okay, I want to do hydrogen, the right way. And it sounds like you know what you're talking about. So she decided to try my way and the protocols that I use, that I created. And her results were so phenomenal that when her doctor saw them, he almost couldn't believe it. He's like, okay, I want to track everything for almost half a year because I really want to see what's going on. I have a hard time believing what I'm seeing here. He did that. At the end of it, he told her, he said, I cannot believe what I'm witnessing. Where did you learn to do this? Because I am witnessing what I believe is impossible. And then she told him, well, there's this guy on YouTube, I reached out to him, I talked to him or whatever. And he was like, no way. There's just no way that some guy on YouTube is teaching this because he said, this is literally worthy of a Nobel Prize. That's what he told her. And I always remember that story because it was unbelievable. I mean, she was type 1 diabetic and that means that she needs insulin. Her body's not making it.
yeah.
And we were able to go without insulin with her for like 4.5 months. And that's supposed to be impossible. You're not
Yeah.
supposed to be able to do that. And
Right.
so that was one thing that her and I were able to accomplish. And that wasn't the only story. I mean, there's so many. I recently got a call from a doctor, usually in the medical field. Like if you go get a test, they only call you when there's bad news. That's
Yeah.
usually what happens. That's the way it works. Otherwise, they're
Right.
going to be calling everybody. So they say, if you don't hear anything, it's all good. Well, I get a phone call from a doctor, and I had got blood work because I get blood work regularly to make sure that my protocols and that what I'm doing is working. I need to see if things are working or not,
Right.
or
Of course.
if I need to modify anything. So I get this phone call, and then I immediately got worried. I'm like, "What's going on?" And she said, "I'm calling about your blood work." And I was like, "Yeah, yeah. What's going on? Like, what did you find? You're worrying me here." She said, of all the years I've been doing this, I've never seen blood like yours. And it's so unbelievable that I actually want to know what you're doing. And I was like, whoa, that doesn't happen very often with these doctors.
Yeah.
Um, because most of the time they just don't want to hear it. They're just like, oh, okay, you're doing great. So you don't get doctors that are actually asking questions. Though now I'm actually educating doctors. I've had doctors contact me. They want to know my protocols. They want to know my techniques because of results that they've seen with a lot of their patients. And so that's why this doctor had called. And what's funny about the doctors that are interested is it's almost always for the same reason. It's either for them and usually a family member. So it's
Mm,
usually more personal than for their patients. Now, of
mm,
course, some ask for their patients. And so those are just some of the few examples. There was a really great one too about a doctor who saw my video number 68, where I showed an actual live blood analysis, and we showed with and without the hydrogen, specifically from the way that I make my hydrogen and the equipment that I use. And what this doctor witnessed, they said, what I'm witnessing on your video here is impossible. And I think that you're giving bad information to people out there. And I was like, no, this is legit. She said, were you in the lab? And I said, well, no, I wasn't in the lab, but I know that this information is pretty accurate. I do my homework. And she said, look, I tell you what I want to do. She said, I want to buy the exact equipment that they used in the study. I want you to find out all the details of the study, and I'm going to redo it. And if the results don't come back the same, are you willing to do a video and say that the information was wrong? And I said, sure, absolutely. I do want the truth.
Yeah.
And so she did all this. And I still remember when she got back to me, she said, I can't believe it, but the results were exactly the same. She said, this stuff is unbelievable. And she started using it on her 90 something year old mother. And the results on that one, that's another great story. But I mean, it's just been
Wow.
so, it's been one after another. I mean, this has been years of this. I got over 400 videos. Even the company now has a YouTube channel. The company's called Holy Hydrogen. And they've had some great videos because I don't really do interviews or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And, they're probably going to get way more testimonials because they're the company and they talk to their people. And they do a lot of really neat videos where they've interviewed people and they like real people, who've actually not just like somebody like, I hate to say this, but there's a lot of testimonials out there from companies that I know are fake,
Yeah.
that they're writing up. And I've learned that from literally like whistleblowers that work from these companies. And I've
Right.
learned that there's a lot of shenanigans out there. And the shenanigans I've learned about in the world of hydrogen, they kind of hurt my heart because
I know.
I want people to get the right information. And I've literally way too many emails of people who have harmed themselves by using hydrogen the wrong way. And that's pretty heartbreaking for me because of how amazing I know that it can be if done the right way. And so anyway, there's a lot of doctors who are very interested in this technology.
Good. We need this to this information out there. I mean, come on now. It's wild to me how, and again, kind of like going back to nature, how this is like what Mother Nature gives to us. And, like you said, this wasn't really spoken about at a point in time. Now it's everywhere. But unfortunately, because money. People like to
Yep.
create things and falsify them and things of that nature and are harming more people. And then you have, others that are like, it's not real, it doesn't work. No, you're just getting it from the wrong source. And
Yeah.
so I know you mentioned this before, but like, what's the difference between the, piece of equipment that you use? Like, is that holy hydrogen, right? Is that
Yeah, if people want to see the equipment, the official website is holyhydrogen.com.
okay?
And because of what's happened throughout the years, I always tell people make sure to go to a reputable source like the official site because I actually have seen fake units out there. I mean,
Oh,
remember, this is the number one machine in Japan. It's the number one machine in all of Asia and probably the world. But so, they try to copy them. But the problem is when you try to copy something and you don't actually have the real technology, so you don't
yeah.
actually have the real parts. You just kind of make it look like it, but it's not really it. And so I have seen that out there. But yeah, the official website is called Holy Hydrogen.
Okay, cool. I kind of want to switch gears a little bit. And you had
Mhm.
mentioned talking about your, spirituality and spiritual belief. Can you kind of talk to me about that and kind of how that helped you through, your adversity and kind of get to where you're at today? Because it takes courage to get out there and to spread a message that people are like, nope, you're wrong. What you're doing is unethical, blah, blah, blah. I'm sure you've heard a lot of things. And so, how did you utilize spirituality and your spiritual belief system to kind of navigate through these adverse times, especially with your health?
Yeah, I mean, it was really tough. I mean, the whole spiritual aspect has been a huge part of my life that I was really kind of kept inside. I don't go around telling everybody what my personal beliefs are.
Yeah.
Um, but I do greatly believe, as a lot of ancient scriptures say, the body is the temple. They
Mm.
say it's the temple of God. I personally, through this experience, I believe that the body is so much more important than we previously really thought about or realized. I think it's really important. And one of the things that drives me nuts, and I don't know if it's by design or not, because I don't want to make any claims, but I kind of feel like the human body or the temple is being literally poisoned.
Yeah.
And I say this because I check ingredients in all the foods. I see what's in there. The majority of them just don't even make sense of why they would possibly be in there. And it's like, why would they want to do this to humans? Some people would say, oh, they just want to make them sick so that the pharmaceutical industry can make more money. And look, maybe there's partial truth to that. But one of the things that I learned through my experience is that as you put garbage into your body, it clouds the mind. It clouds the judgment on top of creating ill health. But the biggest thing is how much it clouds it. So one of the things that I personally, the journey that I embarked on when I was trying to improve my health was I went after purity. So I learned how to clean the water to the utmost degree. I wanted to, eat the cleanest, best foods that I possibly could for my body, for my blood, for my health. And then, of course, the hydrogen. One of the things that I learned about hydrogen too is there really is a difference between what I would call medical grade and non-medical grade hydrogen.
Mm,
And I think a good example is oxygen because we already use it. So if you go to a hospital, they have oxygen tanks. Now that's medical grade oxygen. You go to some place where they do welding, and that is not medical grade oxygen in those tanks. Now, do you know the difference?
mm,
Because people don't understand the difference, and the difference is quite simple. It comes down to purity. So medical grade oxygen is of high purity. So I really went for this high purity thing. And on top of it, of course, I wanted to do what the body was designed to do. I
mm,
really wanted to put, quote unquote, my faith into how this thing was supposed to be utilized or how it's supposed to be fed. And one of the things that I quickly realized through science also, but critical thinking, is that you don't want any deficiencies when it comes to the body. Kind of like a house or a structure. You don't want to be missing a support beam or part of the foundation. You want every piece that is required to make the structure whole and strong. And so that was another big component about how I went at this. And so, we know, just so you know, through science, we know that deficiencies lead to disease typically. If I were to
yep.
give you an example, if you're deficient in vitamin C, you'll get scurvy. And to fix the issue, you actually just put your vitamin C levels back where they should be. I mean, that's how simple it is. you know it seems simple, right? And
Right.
yet when you go to a doctor, almost never do they ask you or check if you're deficient in something and what the nutritional deficiency they would want to fix. It's highly unlikely that they would ever do that. One of the first questions I ever see that they ask is, hey, how are you feeling? Are you sad? Let me put you on an antidepressant. It's like, what? Like, that's the first thing you're going for?
Yep.
um, because certain nutritional deficiencies, or if your body's not working right, yeah, it could lead to depression because your body's not running on all cylinders and you're not giving what the body really needs. So all these were part of my thought process.
Mm,
And so that's part of the spiritual way of thinking, really, is that this body was created by something greater. I want to understand this creation, just like Mother Nature too. I want to understand it so that I can figure out exactly whoever created it, how it's intended to truly function. So that was kind of how that component came in. And of course, by purifying the body, this gets a little weird. I probably won't go into it too much unless you or your audience really is interested. I'll just say that as I went through the process and really purified this body and began to give it everything it needed and the hydrogen and everything, I ended up having some really strange experiences that I would have never in a million years thought would have happened that were deeply spiritual. And I just didn't expect it. And then, like, the light just went on in a major way. And I realized, oh my God, the way that we should be treating this body. I mean, it is, in my opinion, sacred. I mean, it is
Sacred.
so sacred. And the fact of how we treat the planet and how that affects our health, like, for example, microplastics. I
Mm,
mean, they're everywhere now. And it's because of all the stuff that we are doing that ends up coming back to us. And it's all very, cyclical. And
yeah.
so anyway, so that was part of my thought process, and doing this whole thing just has really changed the way my brain works, my outlook on life, just so many things that I mean, it would be a very long conversation, but hopefully that answers your question about how the whole spiritual component came into this.
Absolutely. Okay. I would like for you to kind of go into kind of what your spiritual experiences were, because when you are, and I know this from personal experience, when you are at your lowest and when you are trying to get your ducks in order and regain your health, I have also had those spiritual experiences, and actually my gifts were heightened during that time. And it was to a point where like I couldn't deny it anymore. So I'm curious because honestly, I think it's just as important for men to speak about this as well. Um, only if you would like to share.
Well, I mean, it gets the reason that so you know how sensitive it is to talk about what they call like religion and politics, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so this is one of the reasons that I have shied away from it a little bit. The biggest thing I can say is just, like I said, I think purity is incredibly important.
Hmm.
There's an interesting verse in an ancient scripture that says, "Life is in the blood,"
Hmm.
right? And when you really begin to understand the blood and the kind of stuff that we put in our mouth that ends up in our bloodstream and how that ends up clogging up your brain and clogging up a lot of things. I wish that people could see, there was a video I did on dementia and Alzheimer's. I mean, again,
Mm,
something else that is supposedly you're not supposed to be able to really fix or reverse.
Yep.
Again, I'm not making any claims, but I will tell you a story, and I have it on the video. This daughter, her mother had dementia,
Mm.
really bad. She didn't even recognize her own daughter anymore. So it was very sad. And the daughter, this woman, she got one of those devices that I use of the hydrogen. She saw some of my videos. She tried it on her mother. The results were so unbelievable. She started taking pictures of her mother to show the progression. And of course, her mother started being able to recognize her again, and her brain
Wow.
started functioning better. And it was like so heartfelt, like literally bring you, to your tears. That's why this is so moving and so touching, this whole hydrogen thing, because of how it changes. Maybe it's just one life, but it's one here, one there, and eventually it becomes a bunch of people, and I think eventually it'll probably become a movement. It's
It
that
should
wild,
be.
and spirituality, in my opinion, has a lot to do with health, actually. I mean, if you look at stories of people, for example, like Jesus, I mean, he would go and he would heal people, right? Like literally physically heal people, instead of just going around preaching and saying, you don't have to heal, that doesn't matter. Clearly it seemed to have mattered. And so I just think that there's a really important component where these two parts can truly come together. And then once you start taking it to another level, so I was kind of surprised. I didn't expect, like, when this whole first started and I started feeling better and that's all wonderful, then all of a sudden things start happening, like, to my mind. Like I literally
Mm.
started having, like, well, this is pretty wild, but I started having like visions
Okay.
of even of some things that I, at someday, some point, I don't know when, because I know I'll need help to build certain things that are going to change the world. Like, for
Amazing.
example, there's a device that I'd like to build. I think it's probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of about $30 million, which I know seems like a lot of money, but with the way government spends money, that's probably a drop in the bucket. But this device that I've envisioned, could potentially get rid of almost all disease, and could basically take care of just about any medical condition, which is a big statement, and I know. Though I did get a chance to talk to a doctor who also is a scientist from UCLA. Somebody wanted me to talk to him, somebody who I knew, because of me telling him about this device, and he's like, "You can't really go out and tell people the details of it right now." He said, "You really need to keep it private, but I
Yep.
want you to talk to this guy from UCLA." This, because he thought that it was just too good to be true. He's like, "Dude, I don't think that what you're saying could possibly be true, but you're gonna have to talk to this guy because he'll validate it. He's very intelligent, scientist, doctor, whatever." And that guy and I spoke for hours. And within the first 5 minutes, he thought, "You're crazy. There's no way you can build something that could do this." And by the way, it's not just taking care of medical problems. It appears that this machine could actually reverse aging in a major way. Like, when I say reverse aging, like take an 80-year-old and you'll walk out 20 years old again, which I know it sounds totally nuts. And so when I talked to him, and I actually found a lot of scientific evidence that supported my hypothesis that most people would have never thought to put together. And I compiled it, I showed it to him, we talked. And by the end of it, he said, "You know what, this is crazy, but I think it might actually work." He said, "At this point, you just have to get funding." And so, but you're definitely going to need some engineers, scientists, doctors.
Yeah.
And I would love to work with someone like, actually, like Elon Musk. I think that he's a great engineer, and he would have access to the right pieces of information. But that's kind of a pipe dream right now. But there's also other visions that I've had. That's the craziest part. Things that I would have never been interested in, things that I
Mm.
just, once you start doing this to the body, once you
Mm-hmm.
purify it, it's the craziest thing. Even, hydrogen, in my opinion, is actually potentially one of the most spiritual, literally, things on the universe, in the planet. I mean, what people don't understand, again, ancient scripture is saying, "Let there be light," right?
Mm-hmm.
The light comes from our sun, right? Which is
Mm-hmm.
basically a star. So all the stars in the sky. What is this? What is the sun made of? It's pretty much made of almost entirely hydrogen, all right? Um, which is pretty wild, even water. I mean, water is primarily made of hydrogen,
Yep.
H2, molecular hydrogen. That's what it
Yep.
is. So it's this very magical, thing that's out there in the universe and in the world and in all of existence. And I actually think, have you ever heard of, this is a great book, by the way. Have you ever heard of a book called The Hidden Messages in Water?
Hell yes, I have. Love that book.
I love this too, but when I first read it, remember, I am a skeptic, I
Yep.
question things. Let's just say I question things. It's not that I don't believe them. When I first read this book, I thought, this has got to be garbage. I mean, there's no way you're going to talk to water and that water will respond from pictures and music and thoughts. And there's just no way. Well, do you know who wrote this book?
I forgot the author.
It's a Japanese guy, Masaru Emoto.
Wow.
So the Japanese, I'm telling you, they're
They're
leading the
ahead.
way.
Yeah,
They're
they
way
are.
ahead. They're
Mm-hmm.
light years ahead of us in certain things. And
Mm-hmm.
so this everybody thought was crap. Many years later, eventually they start realizing that it was a real deal. So it took a while. Now, why am I bringing this up? Because what they concluded in the book is that water has a memory.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, here's my theory. Nobody's ever posed this. I don't talk about it a lot, but it's part of the spiritual component. I don't think it's the water that has the memory. I think it's the hydrogen within the water because
Oh.
water is actually primarily made of hydrogen. And the reason that I say that hydrogen has the memory is because it is literally the very first thing basically created. Let there be light. It all started with hydrogen. It's the very first thing on the periodic table. And I believe that it carries all the memory within it, which is why, as I've used it, I feel like I'm accessing information that I just, it seems really weird to say, but the way that, hydrogen goes right past the blood brain barrier, by the way. So it goes right to the pineal gland, goes to the brain, liberates the body of stuff that bogs it down, the free radicals, oxidative stress, the way that you should see the way it moves blood. I mean, that was the one thing that the doctor from my video 68, they saw the video and they're like, that's impossible. Can't be that's just can't be real. And it is real.
Mm.
It is the hydrogen literally is the molecule, in my opinion, of life. It is a life
Mm.
molecule. It brings life to the body. When you bring life, you bring health. The sun obviously brings life. Water brings life. They're all hydrogen. I mean, really. So it is the life molecule. And when you see the life that brings to the blood, as a lot of ancient scriptures also say that life is movement. That's why when you see a little child, little toddler, they got so much life and they're running around and they have so much energy and they're filled with life. And when somebody's older in the end of their life, they're not moving much, they're very cold, and they're not very active. So so hydrogen has everything to do with that. And oftentimes they call hydrogen active hydrogen because it is so active. It's got so much energy, so much power. Hence the reason that it can be used for energy, right? And our body seems to respond so good to it that it literally seems like it's like the perfect thing for our body for energy. I know that we use food and things like that for energy, but hydrogen, nothing moves our blood like hydrogen that I've ever seen. So it's just such a miraculous substance, and I'm obviously enamored by
You really, this is phenomenal because number one, you got me thinking. I'm like, when you said that about the water, like, oh, and it's on the it's first on the periodic like all of these things truly make sense. And the fact that you're having these visions and it being, I mean, I'm almost speechless because it just makes so much sense to me now. I never even really like thought about it. And again, like you said, this is out there now. Like people are talking about it. And that's where I kind of, you know, got me thinking, but you're really putting this all together for me. Like this really makes sense. And I could 100% see you. I literally, like, as you were talking, I saw you creating this innovative tool. I mean, you're doing it. You're doing it. It's happening.
it. And honestly, I just barely scraped the tip of the iceberg as far as what I could tell you. There is so much more. I also call it the ascension molecule
Okay.
because there's a component between spirituality and ascension. Like Moses ascended, Elijah ascended, Jesus ascended. There's so much talk about ascension throughout history of these highly spiritual people. What does hydrogen do? It ascends. That's what it does. It's its nature to ascend. And it literally ascends so high, all the way back to the heavens or the cosmos or outer space, whatever you want to call it. Ascension is part of it's the life molecule. When you take it with water, and I won't go into too much detail, I guess, unless you really want to hear about it, but when you look at water, water is to me the marriage between life and death. And what I
Mm,
mean is you have hydrogen, which is life. Oxygen is actually death, as crazy as that sounds, because oxygen is oxidizing, it's oxidative. I mean, it's literally what will turn metal to rust and to dust, and then it's just gone. And so when you separate hydrogen and oxygen, what happens to oxygen? Oxygen drops to the ground like a dead person.
mm.
Hydrogen ascends, the life molecule. So it's a marriage between both of these in water. Water, see, have you ever heard of something called the age of Aquarius?
Yeah.
Okay, see, I personally believe that almost everybody's wrong about the age of Aquarius. Um,
Tell
so
me
you know,
more.
so this is what's come to me, through everything that I've been doing. But the age of Aquarius has everything to do with the knowledge of water, and it's going to have
Mm,
everything to do with ultimately the knowledge of hydrogen. Even when you look at highly not just spiritual beings, but enlightened beings, or with a lot of knowledge or ancient knowledge. Like, for example, the Pyramid of Giza. Obviously, we know it's an amazing structure. We can't even fathom how they built it. Well, a lot of people don't know that it was built on top of a river. There's a river that runs underneath the Pyramid of Giza. I don't know. Are you aware of that?
I did not know that. That's absolutely
Okay.
fascinating.
That was discovered not that long ago. But there's a river that runs underneath it. And again, I believe they did it on purpose. They did it for a
Mm.
reason. They built it on top of water because they actually had a method of extracting hydrogen from the water. So the
Oh.
pyramid worked in synergistically with water. And it had to do with how they created this lush, beautiful green land because it's the life molecule. So the age of Aquarius is going to have everything to do with learning this knowledge. And it will, in my opinion, it's going to transform the world of health.
Yep.
It's going to transform the world by the way of agriculture. I haven't even gone into that. I have a vision for devices to change food. I believe we could grow food that the world has never even, it hasn't seen for thousands of years. Like we're
Mm.
talking Garden of Eden type of food, food that is so highly nutritious, food that you just can't even imagine the things that we could do. It's so magical. Forget GMO and spraying chemicals on our food. I mean, that's just ridiculousness that we do.
Yeah.
It's so dumb. But we can
It
we can
is so dumb.
I mean, I think it's foolish. So the age of Aquarius is going to be something quite phenomenal, in my opinion, and I do believe the world's going to change, but it's going to take a little bit.
Yeah.
But we're on our way.
I believe that too. I believe and I've also pondered on these topics as well, where it's kind of just like these things just make sense. And I always say science and spirituality are on they're on two sides of the same coin, and you cannot have one without the other. It just goes together. And we've somehow separated them into these two separate beings and things. And I am just so impressed with all of the things that you're doing, and you're teaching people, you're educating them, and look at all of the people that you've helped. This is phenomenal information. I'm so honored to have you on the podcast.
Oh, thank you.
You're
And I
welcome.
encourage people, I really do. I mean, look, if people want to just support what I'm doing, it is free to support what I'm doing, by the way. You go to
Yeah.
YouTube, you subscribe and share with people. I mean, this supports what I'm trying to do. One of my goals is obviously eventually to get on a huge platform to be able to share this information and create like a huge movement in regards to all this. But the other thing that people can do if they really want to see it for themselves, I encourage them to go to the other YouTube channel that's called Holy Hydrogen, I think is the name of their YouTube channel,
I think
because
so.
you can actually see people who were interviewed. There was a lady. It was such a beautiful story. It was pretty miraculous. I think the hydrogen's going to change the world of TBI, which is traumatic brain injury.
Oh.
So like athletes, like these football players, they're all banging each other, in the head.
Yep.
And then later on in life, they have all these problems and the
CTE. Yep.
concussions, all these problems. And that's just football players. What about boxers and MMA fighters and just all sorts of different, and just people who've been in car accidents. And one of the stories that, I mean, it blew my mind. My hydrogen's always blown my mind, by the way. It's so impressive. There was a woman who contacted me one time, and it was very hard to speak with her because she literally couldn't really make a coherent sentence, and she would
Mm.
literally lose track of everything and forget things every 10, 20, 30 seconds. And it was really sad. But the point is, I spent a lot of time with her trying to help her because I really, I want to help people. And so I spent a lot of time with her. Eventually, I helped her figure out a hydrogen protocol for herself and blah, blah, blah. The reason I'm sharing this story is because she called me back somewhere in the neighborhood of 6 months later. And I didn't even recognize who it was. I talk to a lot of people and I don't see them. It's usually just a voice on the phone. And she had called me and she just said, "Look, I just wanted to thank you for saving my life." And I'm like, "Who is this?" And we started talking. She was speaking coherently, so I didn't recognize her.
Oh.
After some time of talking, and I realized finally who it was, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I remember you. Okay, yes." And I said, "Well, how have you been?" And she's like, "I'm doing so amazing. I wanted to call you because I didn't know this, by the way." She said, "You saved my life." And I was thinking, I wasn't thinking I saved her life, but the reason she said that was because she said, my TBI was so bad. She said, I was literally going to take my life. I was going to end my life. I couldn't live like this. And I prayed, and you popped up within 24 hours on some video. And she said, I just felt it and I went for it. And, I contacted you and all this stuff. And I did, I helped her with the protocol and everything. And she said, because of the miraculous results that I've gotten, and now I can remember things, I can talk, pretty coherently and all this stuff. She said, you saved my life. She said, I did not end my life. I now am living a life and I'm so much happier. And this is so amazing. And because I don't do interviews, but the company ended up interviewing her. So you can actually see her story on the Holy Hydrogen channel. And you can actually see her talk about it, her experience. And it's just so beautiful. And that's just one of so many stories. Like I said, I believe that's how you feed the soul, by the way. I believe you
Mm-hmm.
need to learn how to feed the body, but a lot of people don't know how to feed their soul. That's why they feel empty inside. That's why they don't feel good. And ancient scripture tells us to love our neighbor as yourself. But what does that mean sometimes? I think it's, we got to show love in different ways. And, doing this feeds my soul a lot too. And so sharing this information and just that one story in somebody's life that apparently, I wouldn't say that I saved her life, but, change her life changed because of hydrogen, not because of me per se. And that's why I just think that the world needs to know. I just think it's too important. So that's just another one of those neat stories. There's so many of them at this point because of all the years I've been doing this.
It's
So
amazing though, and you're so right. Like this, that's why I do this podcast, so like people can learn about all of these different healing modalities that they didn't even think know was possible. And it's like, hey, like look at what you've overcome, what I've overcome, what, these different individuals who are not, influencers or trying to be anyone famous. They're just doing the work because it's number one part of their, soul mission and purpose. And they listened to that call within them where it was like, hey, you need to change your life and get back on that path because you got a big mission here. And I commend you for that because it's not easy.
it has been a very hard road. I will not lie about that. It was absolutely brutal. But if something good could come out of it, dare I say, then it was all worth it. But sometimes I probably still wouldn't want to go through with it again.
I
But I'm
know.
very grateful that I've learned what I've learned. And I'm even happier that I can apply it in my own life and with people that I know and care about. So many people that I've actually, even people that I personally know with gut issues. Hydrogen is so amazing for the gut. People that I've Crohn's disease, celiac disease, IBS, I mean, all these type of conditions and the stuff I've seen, and almost 80% of our immune systems in our gut, and
Yep.
the way that it affects our happy chemicals, in our brain. So back to that depression topic again, and just things, it just goes on and on. Hydrogen appears to function as an anti-inflammatory. It's a special type of selective antioxidant, which is different than your average antioxidant. I kind of wish I'm going to have to get a picture of this because it comes up a lot. Antioxidants come in different sizes. A lot of people
Hmm.
don't know that. Like vitamin E might be this size, CoQ10 could be this size.
Hmm.
They're different sizes, and hydrogen is so tiny you basically can't see it. And that's what makes it so powerful because it can get into every nick and cranny of the body, right past the blood-brain barrier, right into the mitochondria. I mean, there's literally no place in your body that I cannot reach. And it's almost like a ghost. Sometimes I said it was like the Holy Ghost because it can go right through anything. It can go right through metal, right through glass, right through walls, right through your tissue. It just goes right through anything. And that's part of its magic because a lot of antioxidants can't penetrate every single part of the human body.
That's phenomenal. I didn't know any of this. Like, this is great.
It's
Wow.
exciting.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. As we wrap up, do you have any words of wisdom that you would like to share with the listeners?
Well, I mean, what I would tell people is, look, I think that everybody wants their health to be improved and their mind always to either stay functioning the way it should or improve it if it's not functioning. And I really do think that the two most important things you can do, it's so easy. One, you have to clean your water. We probably didn't get into the details of the lab report of what is in our water,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's crazy. I mean, it's so unbelievably nuts. I'll give you some examples. We know that there's arsenic and pesticides and pharmaceuticals and that kind of stuff, but some of the stuff that really surprised me that I did not know until I studied it for a long time was radioactive material. I didn't know that we had radioactive waste in our water.
Oh,
A
God.
lot of people don't know that the way that it affects children, especially babies and young children, because their bodies are not fully developed, their livers, their kidneys, they can't handle this stuff the way that an adult could. And even for adults, it's no good. The other thing that shocked me is all the parasites, bacteria, and viruses in our water. So that's
Mm-hmm.
another really big issue. And pretty much water filters don't really eliminate all this stuff. And so what I actually use is called a carbon distiller.
Okay.
The good news is that it's cheap. There's a website called mypurewater.com. And if people want discounts, if they want, they can support by using the code uprising144K, and it gives them a discount. So that's the most important part. But these carbon distillers literally remove just basically just about everything. And you can use this water in different ways, like people with the eye condition. You would not want to use your average water filter. Just let me tell you that right now. Have you ever heard of a neti pot?
Yeah.
Okay, this is important. In a neti pot, when you're flushing your sinuses, you do not want to use tap water, and you do
No.
not even want to use filtered water. And for people out there who don't read the directions or just don't know, people have literally died not reading the directions and using filtered water because there can still be bacteria, viruses, parasites in that water. The water needs to be of the utmost cleanliness, like little what I would call like medical grade, right?
Yeah.
Carbon distiller. That's what it does. It makes the water so pure, getting rid of the viruses, bacteria, parasites, on top of it all the other garbage in the water. And that's the water that the neti pot, if you read the directions, recommends to use for flushing sinuses. But I use techniques where I also use like hydrogen water. So I make it
Hmm.
super clean. With super clean water, you can put it on your eyes, like people who have certain eye conditions. And for people who don't know, your eyes are basically a part of your brain.
Yep.
So it's very, very important to use the cleanest of water. And for a lot of other things too, whether you use it in your ears or whatever other things that you'd want to use the water for, there's a lot of different like for example, when I use food grade hydrogen peroxide, and I have really strong stuff, so I dilute it. You'd want to dilute it with super clean water because it can interact with other things in the water potentially. And so,
Oh,
and the microplastics, number one source of microplastics is your water. So that's
it's
another one.
ridiculous.
It is ridiculous. And so something so simple as a carbon distiller and a hydrogen machine, just those two things, in my opinion, and I've seen it and it's been part of my life, will absolutely change your life and your health. And I think bring more clarity, more health, more happiness. And if any, words of wisdom, I would just say treat your body better because once your health gone, it is so hard to get it back and it takes so much work and it's so valuable. You can't really, in my opinion, you can't have a really good and healthy or happy life if you're not healthy. For me, it just wasn't possible. It's miserable when you're in pain. It's miserable when you can't walk. It's miserable when you have to rely on some pharmaceutical that's destroying your liver or your kidneys or whatever else. So if I don't know if that's words of wisdom, but also, be kind to yourself, be kind to others. And I guess that would be my little 2 cents in regards to that
I
question.
love it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you so much. Well, you're very welcome. And thank you also for having me on.
You're welcome. Greg, where can people find you?
Oh, yeah. So people can find me on YouTube. It's obviously free and it's Uprising144K. You can find me on Twitter also. You either look for me as Uprising144K or you look for me as the Hydrogen Man or Hydrogen Man. So you can find me on Twitter. I guess they call it X now, Instagram, Rumble, and I think that's about it. I will say that I'm not a really big media guy. I'm not even good at computers.
Mm.
So the main stuff is really just on YouTube. On those other platforms, I put little information out here and there, but the main place where you get all the information is YouTube. And if people really want to email me directly or contact me directly, I don't do a lot of personal consults these days because I'm so busy, but some people are like, I absolutely need one. I really want one. They email me, and that's uprising144k at gmail.com. And that's how people can also contact me. And I always recommend, put your name and phone number because I'm better at calling people than I am trying to reply to emails. Because if I reply to emails, I would be sitting there all day long. I would never get anywhere. So I usually make a phone call when I'm driving to somewhere or doing something, trying to do two things at once. So,
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. And I'll put this all in the show notes so you guys can check that out. And what a great episode. Thank you so much. If you guys
um,
like this, like, share, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.